Artemis Fowl is directed by Kenneth Branagh and is based off of the best-selling young adult fantasy series of novels about a 12-year-old boy who is a genius and comes from a very long line of criminal masterminds, and he comes into conflict with the hidden world of the fairies when his father mysteriously disappears. My setup for this video is going to be slightly different from how I've been doing it the past couple of weeks. With regular reviews, I just go in and do my thing after I've either watched a movie or I've rewatched a movie. And, but with this one, since this film is technically a new release, even though it's not in a theater, I did want to do, something that I was trying to do beforehand when I started doing, a couple more movies, like, straight from, I don't know why I'm rambling, straight from theater sort of reviews, so I'm gonna do it here, and I'm actually kind of excited for that. I'm excited to be able to see, like, a new movie, like, one that just came out, and I'll be able to see it around the same time as everyone else. So, Artemis Fowl. What do I know about the series outside of what I just mentioned in the synopsis of the film? Absolutely f***ing nothing. My wife knows the series pretty well. She owns the books, she loves them, and she did not even like the look of the trailer. Now, or any of the marketing. Now, granted, the marketing campaign wasn't the best for this film, but I don't know, just, she seemed a bit more focused on the fact that the film seemed to make the lead character more of a heroic character when he isn't really, you know, being a criminal mastermind and all. But again, this is all from my perception. I could have gotten things wrong as far as how she felt about it, because I haven't heard her specifically talk about the movie in that sense in months. It was probably back when I was still in the States. But, you know, I'm gonna march on as usual, whether I'm right in that perception or wrong. This film has had an interesting journey to its appearance in front of audiences, finally. Was supposed to release, I think, last year, August, I believe. And then, like, months before, it was pushed back to last month in May, only to be canceled because of coronavirus. And now we are getting this on Disney+, which definitely does not spell out Disney's confidence in this film if they are just willing to throw it out on streaming, whether it's the potential box office or the critical reception that they're expecting. Like, I think that this is one of the few, if not the only, like, theatrical release movies that they ended up putting on here before it even did its theatrical run. But, hey, I'm hoping that this ends up being a pleasant experience. I'm hoping that it'll end up being a good movie. Besides, I want to keep an optimistic mindset for once, because I am an instinctual pessimist, and just, I'm mostly doing it for the director, if I'm being honest. Sure, Branagh has made some lesser films in the past, even bad ones, but he has made some really good ones as well, and he's been successful with adaptations many times over, being a recurring director of Shakespearean tales, as well as having done the first Thor movie, which is, in my opinion, an underrated comic book movie, as well as the live-action version of the Disney animated Cinderella. I actually still think that that's in the top 3 best live-action animated retellings up to this current moment, and honestly, it hasn't really changed much, because most of them are kind of adequate or lesser. But anyway, so because of all of this, or just him, I'm uncharacteristically optimistic, being the instinctual pessimist and all. Now, before I actually jump in and get into my thoughts on the film, or not even get into the thoughts of my film, before I just abandon you guys for what will be a few hours for me, but barely like a few seconds for you guys, I first want to remind you guys to hit that like button, and also to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And yeah, that's pretty much it. It's time for me to leave you guys and go on my TV, lay down in my bed, turn on Disney Plus, and watch Artemis Fowl. I'll see you guys shortly. if you've been with me for a while, you know that I have a bad relationship with expositional dialogue. Now, that doesn't mean that all exposition is bad. Exposition can be necessary, and I understand that you need exposition in a lot of films, especially if you're needing to introduce new worlds. I get that. Exposition can be necessary in all forms of storytelling. It's how it's used and conveyed that can make it either good or bad. But many times, exposition is not used sparingly, especially these days. It is used to speed through info and not give the film the chance to do what it was created to do, showcase these stories visually. Instead of the intelligence of young Artemis Fowl being put on display for us to see, we are told how intelligent he is and the things that he's accomplished in his life through narration, and we're repeated the same or similar information multiple times, and with many other things like the relationship between the two Fowls, Artemis Sr. or Artemis Jr., young Artemis's personality outside of his intelligence, etc. It's times like these when the film feels like it's just talking down to the audience, and I spend the majority of the film feeling this way, especially with the narration. And aside from those expositional moments discussing Artemis, we never really learn anything else about him or see him really do anything particularly amazing. And touching on the narrator of the story itself, the framing device in this film is for an after event where a dwarf named Mulch, played by Josh Gad, is recounting the story, and he's a big part of the reason why the film did not work for me. His character was set up as a bit more of a comedic focus, but he was rarely funny in my opinion, only producing, if anything, light chuckles, just from me personally, and Josh Gad tried his best to make this character a bit different from the ones that he's normally associated with, which is good. You should always try to do that. You should always try to switch things up a little bit so that you don't get typecast. He comes to this character with a deeper voice than you'd expect from the guy who played Elder Cunningham in Book of Mormon and the same guy who voices Olaf in Frozen. And it really doesn't work, and it comes across as more distracting than anything else. And on top of that, it was just, I don't know, he was too inconsistent with his voice, switching back and forth between the sound of sheet metal being dragged on a gravel road, and between that and what sounded like just Elder Cunningham when he screams.
Hello, would you like to change religions? Have a free book written by Jesus!
Ferdia Shaw, however you pronounce that name. I'm sorry if I butchered it in any way. I probably did end up because I'm just a bloody American. But Shaw is pretty underwhelming as Artemis. I don't really like tearing apart performances for younger performers, but I didn't think he was very good. His take feels a bit too subdued, and not in a deep way. More of the cliche, I'm so advanced that I am also cold and calculated sort of way, along with the fact that he rarely emotes, and whenever he does try to show emotion, it just feels forced. And I feel bad for saying this because it's his first ever acting job, and he was just dealt a terrible hand. He was given this character that is very boring and unlikable, even though he's supposed to be very interesting and likable. And this isn't a jab at the version from the books. Again, the series has never been a part of my life. I'm only judging the character in this movie, and he's... The film's pacing was noticeably inconsistent early on. In the moments after Artemis is shown the truth about his father's work, the film tries to speed through all the detail, and it kind of takes away from the dramatic tension of the situation and just makes it feel more like a checkpoint that you have to get through in order to either get closer to the part that you're interested in playing, or... Oh, I missed what I was trying to say. It was like a video game. There's like the check marks in the mission objectives. It's like you're trying to get through it quickly to get to the part that you're more interested in doing, or you just feel obligated to finish the job. and then just end the game. It feels like one of those things. And it's back and forth after that, but for the most part, the pacing is dragging throughout, and I was bored the entire time. And this isn't even a long movie, it's 95 minutes, that's around the average movie length. It's well seated in the most popular runtime length of like between 90 and 100 minutes. Besides, nothing ever feels entirely interesting throughout. All the discoveries and plans are just surface level, and never feel earned, thus leaving the story with this kind of tedious feel, or at least what you could call a story in this movie. It feels like there is supposed to be a structure and plot points in there, but it's one of those stories that you could summarize exactly what the film is about, and yet you watch it and it's not that. This part was bad from the start. The visual effects, right as they begin showing the underworld, just looks oddly video game-esque. There's a definite frame rate drop while the camera pans through the locales, and the quality of the CGI looks comparable to a TV show rather than a $125 million film, or even for a fairly high quality PS2 game or original Xbox game. Hell, I mean, maybe 360 or PS3 if I had to push it. And we've advanced way too far in film technology to be able to accept this from a high-caliber studio like Disney. In this 90-minute film, there are three action sequences, and they were not very special or interesting to look at. The first one is between the main fairy character and a random troll that was not in any way connected to the plot, but rather it's just an excuse for her to be on the surface in order to achieve what the writers needed done for the story, in their opinion. And the second one is less than a minute and didn't really showcase much except for some in-the-moment interesting cinematography that feels far too stylistic compared to other scenes. And even those that aren't action sequences. And the final one is just a basic run and gun through a mansion that really wasn't very interesting to watch either. So how did I feel about the film? Well, while I was hoping that this would be a good movie, I also prepared for the idea that this wasn't going to be a good movie, that it was going to be bad. I did prepare for that. But I wasn't expecting it to be this bad. This is probably in the top 10, maybe even top 5 worst live-action films that they've ever made. And that top 10 or 5 is especially more conceivable when you put the term adaptation into there. This is probably in the top 10 or top 5 worst live-action adaptations that Disney has ever done. And this is definitely the worst of Branuagh's films that I've ever seen. And I actually recommend against watching this film. There is nothing redeeming about it, and you won't get anything out of it. And for Artemis Fowl fans, this film will definitely be worse for you guys, especially since on top of the overall low quality felt throughout this film, it is apparent that the film did not honor the apparent legacy or charm of the novels. And I'm saying this as an outsider who has a very basic, bastardized knowledge of what the novels are about. But small spoiler, the final line is Artemis talking on the phone with the big bad of the film, and Artemis just ends the call by saying, "I'm Artemis Fowl, and I'm a criminal mastermind." And I sat there as it did this slow motion kind of walk towards the camera as it goes to the end credits, and I'm sitting there thinking, you never really did anything in this film to suggest that you are a criminal, let alone a criminal mastermind. And if anything, you did some morally reprehensive things in order to save another, and you just ended up being just another misunderstood villain or misunderstood anti-hero in Disney's arsenal, right next to our modern-day Maleficent. God, this movie sucked. And with that, my review ends here. Thank you guys so much for watching and just listening to my thoughts on this particular film. I especially appreciate it. I sincerely appreciate it. Once again, don't forget to hit that like button, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And as always, farewell until the next video, all of you casual moviegoers and movie fans alike, and keep on being awesome, my friends.